Hello, everyone, and welcome to a year in review. I'm Keith Haas. I'll be the person who's reviewing his own life here. I decided to just do a speech long, just look at the photos, tell you what you're looking at, and give you a nice little synopsis. I'm going to include me giving breaths, me saying me saying just because I'm getting kind of tired of doing all that editing. And if I were to be honest, that just takes a really long time, and I lose my train of thought every time I say or I have to hold my breath, or do something like that. So, we're going to be going into this new idea of what videos should look like and how they should work. I'm looking at other YouTube videos and I'm like, okay, we'll try this. I don't know if I'm going to continue it. I have no idea, but I'd like to continue making more and more videos. So here we go, and ignore the sound, the high pitched sound that I may or may not have been able to get rid of. That's my computer. Yeah, there we go. So let's move on to the first thing that I went to, which was this great little literary conference. You can't say literary convention because it turns out that's a form of writing a sentence. And yes, I think that's dumb, but that's one of the reasons why there's all these weird names. So it's a literary conference or a literary meeting. It is not a literary convention because those don't exist, or those have some other meaning. In other words, language nerds are kind of dorks. Anyway, I went to Provo, Utah, which is where a bunch of people meet. It's where all the big Mormon writers meet. And the Life, the Universe, and Everything is the name of this conference. And it's actually a really nice little low-key conference. It's not huge, but it's not small. It's about the size of, a hotel floor. That's about it. But there was also some parts in a convention floor, just these rooms off to the side. Very small rooms. There were video games. I got to play a VR game and have conversations with folks about the VR system set up. I had to be careful because I kept walking around and getting entangled up. But I did some art and I enjoyed that. Also, there was a ton of things to take a picture of. Here's a view from the area that I was doing the VR from. Yes, that's a pretty nice view. Provo has some nice mountains, so it's not too hard to take pictures. And then I went to the Marriott, which is just across the street, and might actually be in one of these shots. Let me see. Yeah, we'll say yeah. Yeah, I'll say yes. It's in the distance a little, but you can see it. And that was where we went to have little meetings. The big authors would come in and they'd be like, okay, this is how you should do it, and we're discussing things. And we basically sat there. So, you know how if you're at a convention and they have the guest speakers, it was entirely guest speakers. There was no uh, major area where people were just milling about, showing off their wares. There was a room, and it was very small, where people were selling stuff. Everything else was just conferences, which was a very different point of view from most of the conventions I ever went to. I wrote down a ton of notes from what people were saying. I got good advice, I got bad advice, but it was all advice, and I enjoyed it. So that's what I saw. I found people with good prices. I found out that I could probably get into the comics industry and how to do it for a cheap price. I shouldn't try to apply to Marvel. I shouldn't try to apply to DC. I should save up a little, hire a new artist, and we should, introduce this new idea. So for me, that means Alfred House, my other moniker, will probably be introducing the story of Lawyer of the Gods as a book and also as a comic, because I think as a comic that would work. I also found out some ideas on how to improve my Roman arcades history book, and not so much improve, but do the art correctly. There was also things about how you should write and how you should think of things, and there were there were meetings where people talked about the history of medieval warfare, and people showed, talked about the very minutia of how swords were made, and I really enjoyed that, honestly. We also had an entire conference, or whatever it's called, meeting, whatever, where everything got tackled in by the question of do people how do people travel in time? And we had a physicist there, and it was supposed to be about the cultural questions of what happens when you time travel. But instead, we were talking about, well, maybe it's bubbles, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. And, I have to admit I was fascinated by it. What also caught me as fascinating was the concept of bubbles. Provo is kind of a bubble in culture wise. And yet you can see these kind of glimmers and images of things from other cultures outside. I went to church, and although I'm Mormon, there was kind of a figure of a cross in our chapel, and I was just like, "Wow, what's that doing there?" I mean, we believe in Christ being on the cross, but we don't usually use the cross as a symbolic meaning for us. It's just, why would we want to celebrate some horrific death? Is our mind. Anyway, I enjoyed the conference. I enjoyed what I saw, and I got really invigorated to, just write more and meet other authors, and it was quite fun. So I fully intend to do that again this year, or this coming up year. That is on my to-do list. Woot. The next major thing is the Nintendo Switch's big presentation that happened sometime at the beginning of the year, and also the release of the Nintendo Switch. I wasn't able to get one. I haven't even gotten one of those mini NES or mini Super NES consoles. I'm not going to even claim that I'm able to get one. I'm just too broke as an anthropologist to really do that. But I want one. I've always been a fan of Nintendo, and this looks like they just blew it out of the park this time. I'm one of the few people that owns a Wii U, so to see the jump to the Switch, I'm just like, yeah, that's something I want. The presentation was really cool. They announced a bunch of games that were sequels or redos of things for the Wii U. And since I liked the Wii U, and this is a portable console that can also do Wii U stuff, I was like, yeah, okay, I'm in. I actually ended up buying Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild for the Wii U, and not a joke, I was playing it this morning and I was just enjoying the living snot out of it. It's just a fun thing to do where you just walk around and look for stuff, and even if you already know where you are, you're like, hey, there's that guy. I want to get that sword. Oh, hey, that. Yeah, I want to try that out. Even though I've beaten the game, there's just stuff to continue to explore, little missions I can do, and just exploration in general that I can just enjoy. So I enjoyed that. The big thing about the presentation, for me, was the Street Fighter little 1 to 2 frame thing. It took me a moment, like, wait, was that Street Fighter? And it was. They were releasing a full Street Fighter for the Nintendo Switch, and it was just this upgraded version. They added 2 new characters. It looked nice. And during the presentation for it, the anthropologist in me saw that the interview had 2 Japanese guys talking about Street Fighter. Then they had a translator who was Chinese but grew up in Japan. Then they had a Filipino, and then they had a black guy. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is one of the most multicultural, intercultural systems ever, and absolutely nobody cares because they're more worried about the video game. And that's what one of the things that really catches my eye about video games is it makes people forget about the cultures they're in and creates this new culture of video games. And I really thought that was cool. I have played a couple games for the Nintendo Switch. Mario Odyssey looks like is a lot of fun. Well, honestly, I got kind of bored playing the demo. If I were to be honest here, I played it way off in October, but I had other things on my mind. I was like, maybe if I sat down with this would be fun. But right now, nah, not so much. But the games I really wanted were like Ultra Street Fighter 2. Oh my gosh, yes, I want. That was, my childhood right there was fighting games. And then Breath of the Wild is amazing. I totally recommend it to anybody who even has an inkling of exploration type games. What else? Yeah. The Emerald City Comic Con was pretty low key this year. I only went through the convention floor once, and I actually got intimidated a little by the size. I got to meet the actor for Groot. He was looking for a low-key restaurant where nobody would bother him, and I was like, hey, there's the Subway. Nobody's going to bother you in there, because no tourist in their right mind would go into a Subway. You know, they've got all these extra restaurants. Why would they go into this Subway? Which is why all the locals go there. That's a true thing. I go to that Subway for that reason. And I'm not going to tell you where it is, but it's there. Um, it was also a really fun event. I didn't get to explore very much. I just stayed around the arcade a lot, and I met folks. And really, I was trying to figure out how do I talk to people about being artists for my comic book idea for Lawyer of the Gods. And really, I didn't meet a lot of people. I met one guy. He gave me kind of a phone number thing, and I haven't talked to him since. I don't really know. And I was given good advice, but even the size of just the artist alley is as big as most conventions. Emerald City Comic Con is not a small convention. It is a massive place. It is the size of a city. There was over 110,000 people at this convention. So it was very intimidating, and I fully admit I didn't really know how to respond to things, but I got to see a lot of cool stuff. As you can see, some guy walked in and I realized he worked for Nintendo. He just had some Nintendo stuff on him, and I was like, nobody else would have that kind of stuff. So I asked him if he worked for Nintendo, and a little while later he showed up with the Nintendo Switch, which had just released, and I got to play Breath of the Wild, and I was over the top happy. Everything worked the way it was supposed to. I was just so shocked at how good of a console this was, and it made me smile for the rest of the day. I also ended up with a Batman comic and some other stuff. The dullest thing is every morning I'd have to go in, but I didn't have a little badge, so I had to kind of work my way around. I had to work my way around security so that I could get security to open the door to the arcade. That sounds kind of weird, but that's what happened, and it still makes me laugh because I was so nervous. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. And now that I think about it, I'm like, dude, I have done this for years. I should have known. I should have just done it easily. I know everybody involved. They know me, but I was still nervous. So that should give you an idea that even when you're an anthropologist who's been in this work for a while, you still get nervous. You still screw up. The pictures are just from the arcade. The one I missed was somebody dressed up as a dinosaur, you know, one of those giant dinosaur costumes, and I just didn't get the picture. I did tell that person to go in and play arcade games, though. A lot of my time I was spending outside of the arcade just handing out flyers and telling people to look into the arcade, and they went in, and it was really cool. Anything else? Oh, I spent a lot of time on the ferry just kind of chatting with people, and somebody said that I should start up a not a vlog, or a vlog, or maybe one of those blog thingies, audio podcasts. So this is kind of me trying to get everything together to do that, and it was just me slowly figuring out, okay, what do I need to do? How do I need to do this? How do I sneak in and stuff like that? Yeah, it was a good event, and in the end, I got to go to round one afterwards, and frankly, that was a lot of fun. The Northwest Pinball and Arcade Show was an excellent, excellent show. They had a good amount of arcade games. There were games that had long lines, and they weren't just the pinball games. The newest one that I really liked was actually Batman 66, though Houdini had some cool stuff in it. Uh, Batman 66 was basically just this riff off of, you know, the Batman show from the 60s, and, you know, they would have bits of video from the show showing up, and you'd be trying to hit various characters, and there was this magnet that could move around and pick up your ball, and then you'd try to hit your ball off. And I just thought it was the coolest idea. And the person who ended up winning it was a good friend of mine, so it's just like, hey, good job, you know. The other game really that caught my eye was Space Invaders. That is a shooting game, and oh man, it is just so much fun. And I think I set a couple high scores on it. The first time I played it was during setup, and somebody actually told me to get off. I was like, yeah, I was expecting that. And then we had, you know, a nice amount of variety of games, and the kids zone was pretty cool. We had this mini Neo Geo. I loved that little thing because it's just the right size for kids, and I kind of want it now. And they also had some Wallap stuff. If you're a little into modern arcades, Wallap is a Chinese company that makes fairly dependable arcade games, and they had a dolphin game where you would ride this dolphin that's going back and forth, and you could control them on the video screen, and kids were going nuts on it. They were either enjoying playing it or they were enjoying riding it, one or the other. I think I have a picture of a little girl just riding it by standing on it and controlling it with her hands, and it was just cute beyond cute. It was a good show, kind of boring, honestly, because I've just done this so many times. I was trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to do with myself now? How do I set myself up so that I understand things? Am I really an anthropologist here? Because it says so on my name tag that I am an anthropologist. And I did do some anthropology. I got to hang out with the people who are working to make their own pinball machines, and I got to find out some information from them. It was a lot of technical stuff, and honestly, I wrote down notes, but I think my buddy Ben understood them a lot better. Like they had a better understanding. They had some cool setups so that you could hook up something like that's me doing a very special Argentine snap, in case you're wondering what that sound was. It was, you know, a Raspberry Pi or Arduino, so that you could make the computer system in your pinball machine a simple Raspberry Pi or something like that. That was really cool. I enjoyed that. And they also had a 3D printer, and that was pretty cool. They talked about Maker Faire stuff, and one of my favorite pinball machines was actually an indie game. It was called Steampunk, and it just looks like a piece of art. It's just stained wood, and they've got stained glass pictures all around it. Serious, it is gorgeous. You should see it. What else? We had a nice variety of games, both pinball and arcade, and I left pretty satisfied with it. The biggest problem I had was having to drive from where I was to there because there's this construction going on, and it blocked up traffic by about 5-10 miles. And that was exactly where I was trying to go. So I had to find this alternative route. And I discovered that I actually liked that alternative route just because it has this really cool view, and you get to drive through Tacoma, the really nice parts of Tacoma. I got to see a park. I got to see this. I got to see that. I'm going to take that just because I enjoy the route. I ended up getting flipped off by an old man because I stopped for foot traffic. And the old man behind me was like, "Oh!" So, yeah. But what you really need to know is the very next week was the Seattle Retro Gaming Expo. And I didn't have enough money to go home and then come back. So I decided to just stay at my buddy Adam's place. And while there, I discovered that my Hauppauge video recorder wasn't working, so I couldn't do all this cool video recording I wanted to do at his place. So sorry, you're not going to get any videos about way cool RPGs, though I played some. I definitely played ActRaiser a couple dozen times. Oh man, that was a fun game. I may have been late for a couple of events because I was enjoying ActRaiser. And I also went to Popeyes. That I didn't need to do that, but I did do that. So on to the Seattle Retro Gaming Expo. The Seattle Retro Gaming Expo was a lot of fun. I can't say there was anything new per se, but the location they put it in was new, and I just much preferred it. The previous place was kind of a dungeon. It just felt that way, and it was hard to find, so it was difficult to give people directions. For this year though, you could just be like, go there, and they'd be like, okay, and it was really easy. We pretty much met capacity for space size. Every single area was filled up. Uh, I got really tired, honestly. This was my second convention in a week, and I honestly had moments where I was just like, I don't want to move. I'm kind of done. But I tried to continue on. Seattle Retro Gaming Expo Surge is a very kind of laid back, very chill kind of place, and everybody kind of knows each other, and we kind of do this just to hang out with each other, honestly. So I went there and I met people and I got to hang out with friends and I got to play a bunch of games. There was a nice little arcade set up by an arcade in Bremerton, I believe. And I went, I helped set up the arcade machines, and I also bought an Xbox 360. It was $20. And then, like the last day, I found out that I had run out of money. I had just enough to get home. And I was really shocked because I had just enough to get home and to go to an arcade and to buy food. And I was just going, wow, how did I do that? That's really impressive. I just had enough for gas here and enough for this here. And I was just going, I was not expecting this. But I did have enough for everything, and I did make enough money, and I was running off of cards, and I think I got a bill for my for having to run a light. Not what you're thinking of. When you're going over the Tacoma Bridge, you have to pay a toll, and I didn't, and my card wasn't working, and the lady was just like, just go, and we'll bill your car. And I've never gotten that bill, so I think the previous owner has gotten that bill, and I apologize to him if he ever hears this. The Seattle Retro Gaming Expo itself was this nice little chill place where I met a lot of people. I just started hanging out with people. There was a little girl hanging out underneath one of the seller's tables, and I got a picture of her. And one of the Super Nintendo PlayStation was there, and it was just out in the open, so people could just play with it. And the guy who owned it was just like, yeah, whatever. I have to be careful how I talk about him because he was kind of a funny guy. And if I ever needed a break, I would go over to the console area or the arcade area and just play games. I got to know one of the game designers pretty well. His dad or grandfather worked at the Manhattan Project, which was basically they invented the atomic bomb, and my grandfather was an atomic chemist or nuclear chemist, and he worked at the place in Long Island. So I was just like, oh hey, same thing, cool. And we had this conversation and stuff, and he seemed like a really nice guy. And I gotta admit, it was a good show and very chill. Oh, and I gotta talk about the BattleBots. Well, I'd walk from the show to the train I had to catch and then to the ferry I had to catch. There was a display in the Seattle Square, whatever that place is called, the eatery near the I was about to say near the Seattle Retro Gaming Expo, but really the Space Needle is a better idea. You've seen the Space Needle. You probably don't know where Surge is. But right next to the Space Needle is an eatery. There's just a bunch of food places in there, and in the middle is places to eat. They had a bunch of cages set up so that robots could go to war with each other. So I got to interview some of the folks there. That was a lot of fun. I don't know if I have any photos of them, but I did see them, and I got to interview them, and I heard some really cool stories. And I gotta admit, I felt kind of touristy and kind of not touristy. I really enjoyed going to that show. I'm amazed at how by the skin of my teeth I got home, and that was a really cool week and a half. During the summer, I also spent some time at arcades. The one on the far left is an arcade in Bremerton. It's where I was staying for the two conventions. And a buddy of mine kind of works there. I don't know if he works there. He's just really good with the folks there, and he helps fix their machines. So they're just like, yeah, you've got all sorts of privileges. And I had to drop something off with him. The first time I was there, just wasn't very awake, and I took pictures, but I was like, And the next time I went there, I was even less awake, and some guy who I should have just recognized and been like, hey, I thought he was the bouncer. So I was just like trying to find my wallet, and I'm recognizing him, but I'm in my mind I'm thinking, oh, this is the bouncer. This is the bouncer, right? Because it's a barcade, and the very next place is also a barcade. I was trying to just hand out flyers for the Northwest Pinball Arcade Show, and I came across this place while I was trying to find another arcade. And it was a really cool arcade, very small. The lady there seemed fairly friendly. She wanted to see my ID, even though I didn't want to drink. I just wanted to take pictures of the arcade and move on. And she was just kind of trying to entertain people and stuff. Round one is up on the top right. That's a bunch of rhythm games. It's really my favorite modern arcade is round one. They just have a much wider variety. It just feels like an old school arcade, only with modern games. I really enjoyed it. I got to play a bunch of shooting games and driving games because they have kind of this little unlimited pass. If you pay $8 or something like that, you get unlimited for an hour, so long as the little thing that you swipe is green. If it's multicolored, you couldn't play it. Even though I ended up playing Mario Kart somehow, I don't really know how I got to play that. Or the new whatchamahoosit. Oh, what the new battle game, the new Magic battle game. I really enjoyed the Magic battle game. It's like Harry Potter meets Deathmatch. That's what it was like. And you had a little controller on your left hand, and then you used your right hand to make hand gestures to send out spells. And it was a lot of fun. It was a ton of fun. So I enjoyed round one. And then on the bottom right, I got to go to the eclipse. The eclipse happened right where my brother is living in Rexburg, Idaho. The full eclipse, and just right outside of his door, which was an honest to goodness amazing moment for my life. I will forever remember that moment because I didn't realize it would be that amazing. I thought I understood, but I didn't. The birds were just kind of freaking out because, the sun was going down, and they were trying to land, but they didn't know what was going on because it was just going dark just suddenly. And they were like, what? And, little shadows would show signs of, how much of the sun was showing. And when the sun was finally blocked, I could look at it and I could just see all of the light and the magnetic waves coming off of it. And it was just amazing. We also got to go visit one of my favorite arcades. It's kind of an FEC, but it's a bit smaller. The owners used to live above the FEC, the Family Entertainment Center, and they used to play laser tag there. And my mom discovered that she loves laser tag. So we went there, we played laser tag, and we played some arcade games. That's H2 Overdrive and Batman, and that's my brother and his wonderful wife. They just recently got married. That was my birthday present, as I call it, was getting a new sister-in-law. Yeah, the arcades were a lot of fun. I kind of enjoyed myself. I also got kind of sick, and I just couldn't do a lot. I don't know how to say that correctly, or without admitting to some downtime. I couldn't really think straight. A friend of mine was trying to move, and I was having difficulties walking. I'm just like, dang it. I know I'm supposed to help her, but I don't know if I have the strength, and it was so awful. I was able to help her, and I was able to do stuff, but it was awkward. I am working to be better, but the doctors so far don't understand what's going on. Uh, I finally figured it out later in the year that I had injured myself 15 years ago, and it's just been kicking back in every summer. And just this summer, I finally realized, oh, it's an injury. It's something's wrong. Instead of just going, oh, why am I so weak? I don't get this. But yeah, Summer Arcades was like that. The next thing I did was my buddy Adam was away for a big trip, and he came through Spokane, and he showed me how he collects games. And so I took him to the two major console retro console places, and he bartered a little to get the games, and he bought some games, and he tried to make deals with everybody, and it was kind of fun to just watch him wheel and deal and try to do things. And he had a specific price for every item, and he had looked up every single thing. And the truth be told, when I was trying to find him, my GPS gave me bad directions, so I was really late, and he was actually ready to leave until I showed up. He was actually in his car when he sees me drive up, and he sees me come out. He's like, I really was about to leave. That's amazing. The next thing is a Tesla Roadster. It was part of an electric car show, an electric and hybrid show. I got to drive the Chevy electric car. It's really kind of annoying because they gave a similar name to their hybrid and to their electric car, and I drove the electric car, but one is called Volt and one is called Bolt, and I honestly can't tell them apart. Or blah blah blah. You get the idea. I got to drive this car off campus, so I got to fulfill two desires of my heart in one go. So I drove around through campus, and I got to drive an electric car. That was just an excellent feeling, and I got to take the route I really wanted to take. So, it was pretty cool. I enjoyed that. So this is the Roadster, and right next to it is the car I drove. If you see that little blue car, that's what I drove. On the bottom right, I got kind of sick of the way people have designed computers, and I was just like, okay, that's it. I want a specific kind of computer where, the video editing is being done on this part of the computer, but this part of the computer isn't being affected on it, and then this other part of the computer can do something else. So then I can, video edit, and while it's compiling or doing something like that, I can go and play a video game, or I can do something else. Because if I just give it all to one task at a time, even though it's just got a ton of computer power on my computer, it will all try to do it all at once, and that just, after a while, it just takes up my time because I have to wait for one of them to power down so that I can get other stuff to work. I was just like, you know what, I'd rather it be this way. So that's that little computer design on the bottom right is that. Up on the upper right is a picture, part of a picture actually. I haven't added the people in there, but eventually I added the people. It's for a book called Roman Arcades. It's on ancient arcades in Roman times, or speculation on what an ancient Roman arcade would look like. If I get the chance, I'm going to make some videos about it, just showing pictures and talking about where I came up with the ideas and how I thought it through and stuff like that. So that's what it was. Those were the projects I worked on and how hard it was. Honestly, the one on the top right took me a year and a half because I had to teach myself 3 programs to get it to work. And I felt so annoyed, and that's one of the reasons why I was going through those conventions looking for people, because maybe if I just paid them $20, I could get this picture done and I could just move on with my life. But I decided to try this with a program called Wings 3D, which is based on a program called Nendo, which I worked with back in the 90s and I really enjoyed. So I made this using Nendo, or Wings 3D, and Blender using something called the blah blah blah. It's a human making thing. and then I pose the person, and then I take a picture of the person, and then I kind of trace the person, and then I add, various things so that they look like they're wearing a toga, or they look like they're wearing some cloth and stuff like that. So it took me a long time, and I got kind of desperate, I admit to it, but I really enjoyed the end results. And now I'm working on the next picture, which is one of a very complex arcade game called Persian Invaders. As far as games I just played at my own house, I bought a 360. I got a PS3 last year. I bought Breath of the Wild, and I kind of just went in and bought a lot of games. For the PS2, I think my favorite game has been the Neo Geo Pocket Collection, or Neo Geo Collection. I got to play a bunch of good Neo Geo games from the arcades, and I've really enjoyed that. I've got some other games I could play on them, but really it's been Neo Geo pretty consistently. For the Dreamcast, I got Space Channel 5, the original, the one with Michael Jackson doing a guest appearance. Sega Rally, which is kind of a driving game, and I kid you not, Marvel vs. Capcom 2, the Michael Jackson remix. As soon as I saw that, I was like, oh, I'm buying that. Ooh. I've had a mini convention here. We had all of 40 people show up. I consider that a success. I haven't played anything really on my Sega Saturn, but I have been playing a little bit of my new Super Retro Trio, which I hooked up sometime this year. So then I could play Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo, and Nintendo games all on one console. And really, that's been about it. I've been trying to play Castlevania on my Nintendo 64, but not so much. Really, though, it's been the PS3 and the Wii U, if I were being honest. And I bought a bunch of big group games, or large, long play games. Know what I mean? Like, I bought Castlevania Symphony of the Night, one of my all-time favorite PlayStation 1 games. And I beat it 3 times in a row just because I enjoyed it so much. And then I bought Minecraft, which I'm still playing to this day for my birthday. And I just got sucked into it for a month. And I actually had to learn how to play it, but keep myself restricted, because if I just went at it, I would just go nuts. And finally, I got my 360 to work. I bought a bunch of Kinect games. I bought a Kinect. I hooked it up to the 360, and I've been playing these dance games that I remember playing at an arcade in Hawaii. And I've really enjoyed that. I've got to admit, you're probably thinking, the Kinect's dead. And you know what? You're probably right to a certain amount. But I enjoy these games. And I also bought Forza Motorsport, so that's what's on my 360 right now. I'm also playing Gran Turismo 6 on my PS3. I've got a bunch of other games, but these are the games I'm really playing, if I were being honest. And I'm playing Splatoon and Breath of the Wild on my Wii U. I could say I'm playing some other games. I am playing Bonk's Adventure and The Legend of Zelda 2, which is actually my favorite of the 2 NES games for Zelda. I prefer Zelda 2. I know some people might complain about it, but I actually really enjoyed Zelda 2 better. It's just the side-scrolling sword game that I enjoy so much. I mean, if I enjoy Symphony of the Night, I should enjoy Zelda 2, shouldn't I? What else have I been playing? Other games here and there. I can't say... I've bought a lot of games, but I can't say that I've been playing them. I play them, but really my majors have been Gran Turismo and the driving and fighting games and stuff like that, and the giant large world exploration games, if I were being honest. If you see in the bottom right, see those little chunks taken out of that wood, that really hard wood? That is actually from a BattleBot, and he did the same thing to metal. He was taking like chunks of metal out with his BattleBot. It was so powerful. I enjoyed watching these remote control cars move around and just toss each other into rings and stuff like that. It was a lot of fun, and although I don't have anywhere near the funding for it, I would like to try it out sometime. My buddy Ben was just like, ooh, this and ooh, that. Like the guy who made these chunks right there, he had to buy specialized uh, motors for each wheel, and then he had to adjust them with rubber bits so that everything worked even better for what he needed. So that was a lot of cool engineering and computer effects. So I really enjoyed that. There was actually another convention I could have gone to, but I just didn't have the funds, and it was happening at the same time as Portland Retro Gaming Expo. So I decided not to go to it. So I didn't go to my one of my many hometowns of Yakima, Washington, and it kind of disappointed. I heard they didn't make enough money and they've got some problems now, but really, I think it's really cool that there's a gaming convention and a comic convention in Yakima, and I want to support them as much as I can because those are good people, and it's good to see that something good is coming out of Yakima. Usually, when we say, oh look, Yakima's here, we're not talking about good things, sadly. Yeah. But the Portland Retro Gaming Expo, I basically saved up some money. I bought myself a new phone with 4K vision and a much better camera. And I did all this extra special stuff because I really, really wanted to record kind of the events and show what it was like as best I could. One of the major things they did is they bought their own hand carts. That's the hand cart on the far left, and it's the same one as the ones from the Northwest Pinball and Arcade Show. Only there's a spring so that you can get the strap to kind of roll itself in, which is really cool. And we borrowed one from one of the vendors. We had a really, really nice setup. I was told by a friend that I must have walked about 26,000 steps every day, and 26,000 steps when added together based on my based on how far I step and all that. I basically walked a marathon every single day while I was at that show, and I felt it. I honestly felt so tired by the end of it. I enjoyed the show. For me, it was like going home because this is my chance to see Portland. And I spent my childhood in the Portland area over in Forest Grove. So I got to see things that I usually haven't seen since I was 5. So it was really big for me. Plus these games are always a ton of fun, and this is really on the edge of big for conventions. PAX and Emerald City Comic Con are so big, I don't think they're conventions anymore. They're just sudden cities, or they're just mega things. The Portland Retro Gaming Expo, it's basically a big convention. It's got about 10,000 people coming into it. They sell out all their tickets. They have long lines of people. I know I've got video of the lines and all that. And I really just kind of recorded it and documented as much as I could. And I wanted to make some kind of documentary out of it. This show, I want to get back into video, and I don't know how. But I want to, at least have a phone that can, do all the video and stills that I need for this kind of thing. So I just walked around and I documented everything and I wrote notes, and all those notes are going to come up. I've got to finish the notes for the Seattle Retro Gaming Expo. I'm sorry, you can check that out on my blog. My health just got in the way. I apologize for that. But the Portland Retro Gaming Expo, I decided to go all out. I even kind of edited together what I thought was going to be a documentary. And what I discovered was the Premiere Pro app on my phone didn't do voiceover very well. And it got to the point that I just didn't want to do it. Which is why I'm doing the slideshow you're seeing right now in a very different way. This is actually based on how I do lectures more accurately. If you look off in the distance, you can see a lot of really fun games. We're still setting up, so you can see some of the games that actually left the stage early on. For instance, the the bike riding flying game, it left the first day. Somebody jumped on it by our guesses, and it left. And oh my gosh, I'm so PO'd about that. But it's one of my all-time favorite games. And there was also this other game. It's in the shop, but it would be difficult to describe. It's one of the taller games, and it's a little closer. And it is this nice, weird black and white game. Once again, it didn't do too well, and it needed to be fixed. And the guy who fixed it is actually from Seattle. Also, if you're looking way off to the right of that picture, you can see kind of this blue pinball machine that is a PIB pinball machine. And it has a very special latch on it that never quite worked for me correctly. So every time I had to fix a ball that was stuck, and this happened a lot because the ball was a new kind of ball and blah, blah, blah. And I really started to hate that machine. I mean, if a machine broke down, I understood, but this machine wasn't breaking down. It just wasn't letting me fix it. And so every time I had to fix it, I was just like, oh, come on. And then finally the guy who owned it was like, do you need help? And I'd be like, yes, please. Can you help me? I could actually fix the other machines. I actually did some cool things. But that machine just became the bane of my existence because it proved that I wasn't at the level that I thought I was at. And I've got to admit that I just enjoyed the show though. There was so much to see, so much to do. I spent all of $15 and I think I walked away with about 10 games from that show alone. So that should give you an idea of just how amazing it was. The drive was gorgeous. I decided not to go through Seattle because they had gotten hand trucks. I didn't have to go through Seattle to pick up other hand trucks, though next year I might pick up hand trucks anyway. But I did everything I could to kind of just enjoy myself, and I did. And it was good. The most interesting aspect was I did run out of energy. I basically showed up in the morning before it started, and I'd leave after it ended. And I had to be in charge for the last 4 hours. And then before that, I was kind of a senior volunteer guy who would go and fix machines. And there were honest moments where I had to sit down because I was getting dizzy. I was so tired. And at one point, I realized I needed to eat, and I went to the place to go eat, and all they had they were closing down, so all they had was ice cream and slushies. So I took ice cream, I took an ice cream cone and a slushie, and that was my dinner, and I actually felt better afterwards. But it was an excellent, excellent show. I look forward to next year. I look forward to it every year. It's just kind of a nice little ending for the year for me. And I gave away a bunch of awards to some of my scouts, and it was just a lot of fun. So I enjoyed that time at the Portland Retro Gaming Expo. While in Portland, I decided I was going to do some extra projects. Really, I just had the entire day off, or not the entire day off, but we finished a lot faster than I expected because we had all of the equipment and we had everybody working really fast the night before. So we just finished really fast. And I had an entire afternoon. So I took my buddy Chris and we just walked around Portland and we took pictures. And I have been wanting to do that for years, where I just show pictures from Portland so then people can know all this beauty that I see. Portland in the fall is just this gorgeous thing, and I invite everybody to go and check it out. That's near my buddy Lars's place. I'm not going to tell you where Lars lives because, hey, that's his privacy. But I would just take the train, and if I ever felt like it, I would just get off the train and just or I'd stop at a stop, and I'd go and I'd take pictures. One of them was kind of a disappointment, but it wasn't too much of a disappointment because I had been wanting to take that stop for years, and I finally got to take it and find out it was kind of boring in reality. But another stop, we just kept on walking around and we found this nice little restaurant, and it was just, for me, it was a gorgeous day and I just adored every second of it. And finally, it got so dark, I was like, yeah, I can't take any more photos. But there's this arcade I saw before, around Beaverton. And so Chris and I, Chris lives in Beaverton, by the way, we drove to the arcade and we found out it was a retro gaming store, and it was the retro gaming store for the people of Beaverton. And one part of it was an arcade. They had just barely gotten it in. There were some interesting things for the arcade machines, like 501 games in one machine. And that sounds kind of insulting, but to me, I was like, it's good enough. They're trying to have a large amount of games in a very small area, so I understand. And they had Strider, so I didn't care. In fact, yeah, that's Strider right there, in the nice cab right there. Ooh, ooh. Just gave me chills seeing it because Strider it's on my list. You know, if I had a chance, I'd have a Neo Geo. I'd have Strider. I think I'd have Marvel versus Capcom. I'd have uh, oh Virtual On and stuff like that, and Crazy Taxi, and that would be my list. Those are the games I want, and then everything else would be kind of cool, but not on my list. And then on the other side of that wall that you see is just this giant retro gaming expo or retro gaming store. And I mean, it was to the point that I thought I had seen it all, and then I walked past a wall, and there was even more. So I really enjoyed my trip there. I also got to see Powell's Books, and they had a very, very large amount of books. But what I discovered was they had 20 books on every subject, which sounds like a lot until you see, like, how many books there could be. And I've always been told that this is a huge bookstore, and it is. It is a very big bookstore. But I kept on looking for these books, and they weren't there. And so every time I was like, "Oh, we've got all these books, but not the books I was looking for," which is kind of weird. But it's a very nice place, and I fully recommend Powell's Books to anybody. After the Portland Retro Gaming Expo, I finally got a chance to go to Jedi Alliance. It is a arcade, yay, found in Spokane. It's kind of the arcade for the Spokane area. It's kind of a geek gathering point, kind of like the comic shop in the Northtown Mall. This has 80 games up to be played. There's a really cool story about how the owner saw these guys about to bulldoze a bunch of games, and they're like, no, we'll take them, we'll take them, we'll put them into storage. And then he sold a guitar for tens of thousands of dollars. Yes, really, tens of thousands of dollars. And he bought this place, and they kind of just I don't know if they actually make enough money. I don't, but they do have a lot of people there, and people. It's $10 to get in, and there always seems to be enough people there. And the first time I went in, I just checked out the arcade games, and I enjoyed myself. They have a wide variety of games, and they actually have a multi-game thing up on the wall. On the other side of this wall that you're looking at is a projector of a game, and you can just choose the game from there. So they've got quite the variety, and then they have this museum of toys from the 70s, 80s, 90s, and today, which was really, really cool. That's the little buggy guy right there. And he's supposed to be from Spawn, but honestly, my mind is thinking Half-Life. And there's also a little comic store there. So it's a nice place. And people were asking me if it was a bar, and I was like, no, it's not a bar. There's really no bar-y stuff. It's actually a former church. The place where the preacher would preach is actually the pinball area. That's not a joke. And they got a little kitchen and stuff like that. But for what it is, it's enormous. It's amazing, and I'm really impressed by it. So I made sure to go to Jedi Alliance twice. The first time I just enjoyed the arcade games. The second time I enjoyed the toys. And I was blown away both times. So Yeah, if you're ever in Spokane, check out Jedi Alliance. It's hard to find, but it's worth the find. But it's worth looking for. This is not a joke. I was expecting maybe 20, 30 minutes of time taken up by looking at these slides, and instead we are looking at nearly an hour. I am amazed by this. I apologize. You were probably expecting something shorter, and so was I. But I told myself, okay, I'm just going to look at this slide and I'm just going to talk about this slide. And I ended up just talking my head off. I apologize for all the uhs and the ums and all of that. I've kind of made some resolutions for myself for next year, and this is one of them. I'm going to start making more videos. They're going to look like this. I'm going to get better. There's not going to be as many ums and uhs, but I've got to start somewhere. And I've got to, move on with my life. I haven't been making money off of any of the conventions I go to or any of that. And I don't want anybody to think that I'm going to charge the conventions or anybody for being there. I don't want anyone to think that. But I do need to find a way to make money because I've got bills. I kind of want to move into a nice place. And, my roommates, I love them, but I kind of want my own place. And, just stuff like that. And it's time for me to just kind of find new ways. That was my goal this year, was to find a way to make money off of what I do anyway. And so I'm going to be releasing 3 books this year, at least. The first book, or I'm going to be releasing a lot more than 3, but 3 I know I'm finishing up right now. One is just a picture book from my trip in Portland, Portland in the fall. All that it is just pictures and maybe some descriptions of stuff I saw. And then another book is going to be released for free actually, and it's from notes that I wrote for school when I was going to school. So you can enjoy seeing, my thought process 5 years ago on, various subjects. So you can kind of see things that I was seeing. And I've taken all of the bags I have from conventions. I actually have a bag full of pins and cards and stuff, whatsits for each convention I go to, and I've decided to make a little binder for each for the conventions. This isn't in any organized form right now, or it's not by year. It's just these were the years I was able to grab, or these were the conventions I grabbed. So I may have to do some moving around and stuff, but that's the first book on the left. And I would like to talk about gaming and do stuff like that. But I'm going to be figuring out how to get paid, and this is a wonderful thing for me. But I need to get paid. I don't know how to say that correctly. I apologize for saying that correctly. If for saying it wrong. I don't know what the future holds, but I am going to try to make it. People have told me I need to make a Patreon. I've already set up a Patreon, but I don't know what to offer the Patreon. I want to help people out. I don't have enough office space to collect all of the games I would like to play. So I've spoken to friends and I've said, hey, I'm going to start, if I want to play such and such game, can I come to your house and play that game? And they're like, oh, of course. And, you have access to these games so long as you keep everything safe. And I'm like, yeah, of course. You're a friend, I'm a friend. We're going to be friends here. Why would I steal your games? And I've called them the archives. So if you ever hear Adam's Archives, that's actually just my buddy Adam's archives. He's got it in his house. Then I have the Seattle Retro Gaming archive. It's in a storage locker. I'm still working out how to do that correctly. And, I know various folks who have large collections, and I'm going to be talking to them. So then if I want to talk about a game, I can go and I can play that game and I can record that game and you can see that game as I'm talking about it. But I'm going to be looking at it very differently. I'm not going to be looking at it like Mark Bussler, who's looking at per game, how is this game working? I'm trying to look at, what is the mindset of these games and why are they set this way? And what does this mean about this era? that kind of idea. Uh, what else? And there's going to be. I'm also going to write some more books. Arcade books. Um, I've decided I'm going to write a book on arcade history throughout the world. So you're going to look in this book and you're going to find out the history of arcades in the Philippines, the history of arcades in Japan, the history of arcades in the US, the history of arcades in England, stuff like that, where, it's just this kind of a picture book and it gives basic details and stuff like that, and and ways to go find out greater information and what books and who to talk to and stuff like that, and stuff like that, and stuff like that. And, I've got many books I'm preparing for. I'm getting a lot of stuff done. I'm going to edit all of my notes together so that I can make a book on what it's like to be at a convention, what I find interesting about conventions, and I expect to do videos on what I find. And that's the thing is the future of 2018. I intend to release more videos. I intend to go to conventions more. I intend to make money. And I want you to know that this isn't an attempt to make myself great. It's just, okay, this is what I can do. How can I make this into a living type of idea? Weird. It's always kind of awkward. I come from a very quiet French family, and talking is verboten, and talking about yourself is even greater than that. I don't think I ever heard my granduncle Richard talk about himself, even once. So that's the future. I don't know what it holds, but these are the projects I'm working on. Oh, and I've got a moving 360 camera set up. It's basically an RC car strapped to a dolly and a tripod, but it works. And I'm going to try to give more 360 tours of arcades so that you guys can enjoy it. So you have a lot of stuff to look forward to. I'm going to put a link to my blog here so that you can check out my notes, and to my Patreon so that you can pretend to give me money. Thank you very much. This has been a lot longer than I expected. But it's good talking to you. Bye now.